Welcome to Pause Points with Colleen. I'm glad you're here today. I am excited to be a part of this and get started. I'm guessing a lot of you are like me. You are racing to get it all accomplished. You have the endless to-do lists. I have lists and lists and lists of things. I have lists of lists I need to make half the time. And I don't know about you, but I'm often trying to Tetris my life together. I have all of these disparate things that need to somehow all get fit into a single day or a single afternoon or over the course of the week. And I know that our culture very often says, hustle, hustle, do more, be efficient, be productive. It's hard. It's hard to figure out what matters. It's hard to stay focused, and it's hard not to feel discouraged that it's not all getting done. And I pride myself on being able to keep a lot of plates spinning at once and have for a long while. But I think it's the wrong focus. My dad died earlier this year, and I was reminded when we were preparing for his funeral, and I told the story, and it really did shape a lot. And I think I had forgotten it until somewhat recently. I was very new into teaching, and I don't know if you know a whole lot about teaching, but it is pretty customary that we bring the work home. And I know we're not the only profession that does that, and we're not the only profession that works outside of our hours. That's not the case. But I was bringing home a stuffed bag every night, piled up with papers to grade and reports to complete and lesson plans and all of the stuff. And my dad watched me do this night after night, and finally at one point asked me and said, all that you brought home, does it have to get done by tomorrow? Or is this stuff that, man, it'd be really nice if it got done? And I said, oh, no, I already did the urgent stuff for tomorrow before I left, but this is all the really great if I got it completed stuff. And he nodded. And he says, it's never going to be done. I said, what do you mean? He goes, that bag of wanting to get it done will never be finished. What? I think I had been living under this illusion that there was an end to my list, that there was a point that I would catch up. I was brand new, and the first year is often difficult. And I was living under this illusion that at some point it would get easy. At some point I would get caught up. I would get ahead. I would have enough done that I could rest. And it was a really great point for me from this man who had been doing this professional thing for a while to say, no. And I realized that he didn't bring his work home as a general rule. Mind you, as a doctor, that's a little harder, right? But he didn't bring home the reports. He didn't bring home, or at least I didn't see, that piece to it. And lately I've been realizing that my attempt to get it all done is sometimes too much. Are you feeling the same way? I think there's a number of things that happens. I think we try and sort our priorities. We try and figure out what's really important. So that we can actually focus on what we think needs to be done. I think often our priorities are not aligned with what we really want to be doing. And so we look for that alignment. We look for where we need to spend our time. We often work on what's urgent and what at least appears to be important, or at least somebody else tells us is important. There's an interesting thing called the Zeigarnik Effect, and that says that our brains focus on the things that are incomplete. We are pre-wired to pay attention to those things that have not yet found closure. It's why things like cliffhangers work really well in television series, and why most authors that you have those page-turning books end a lot of chapters with some kind of unfinished, leftover, gotta keep reading to find out the resolution. It's a really cool thing if you use it for those means, but in my personal life, it means that my brain is constantly hanging on the, yeah, but you didn't. You haven't yet taken care of. Don't forget to. And all of that leads to a lot of feelings of inadequacy and like I just can't get my feet underneath me. What's the cost of all of that? What's the cost of me trying to get it all done? Besides ending up frustrated and burned out, but I get overwhelmed by these feelings of inadequacy and like I'm just not doing it all. I'm not doing it as well as she is. For some reason, I can't quite. I think there's a couple of ways to solve the problem. One, say no. It's okay. I don't know if you're a people pleaser like I tend to be. It's hard, I think, sometimes to say no. I had to say no yesterday to somebody very important in my life, and God, that was hard. But my schedule was stuck, and I wasn't willing to unstick it because of the circumstances, because what was there was important to me, and it was a thing that was for me, and I knew I needed to keep it. I think sometimes stepping away from our life and viewing it as a third person can be very helpful. What would I tell my friend if they were in my same shoes, if they had the same list of things or the same pressures or the same goals? Sometimes I look at it and I say, what does tomorrow Colleen need from me today? It's why I tend to do the dishes when I see them. It's why I unload the dishwasher in the morning if it's full. It helps me throughout the rest of the day. I don't love those tasks, but I know that later me appreciates now me getting that done. And so I think about tomorrow, Colleen. What does she want? What goals do I have? Where am I headed? What are those long-term future pieces that I think I'm headed toward? I think if I understand who I am, how I'm wired, if I've gotten curious enough to figure out my personality and my tendencies, then it's a little easier sometimes to identify where I'm going to struggle, when to ask for help, when to give away the things I can, delegate, and just give up on some stuff. I gave up a long time ago on having the Better Homes and Garden house. It's not going to happen for me. And I decided I was okay with that. I got understandable and I got some clarity within me about what my true priorities were. And at the time, it was my family. They were young and they were messy. And I decided that was an okay phase to be in. I've gotten flexible. I've certainly taken the advice of others and I batch work as I try and get things accomplished. And I try and give myself permission to look at the scope of what needs to be done over a longer period of time than just a day. So over the course of this week or this month or this season, what am I looking to accomplish? I try and do that daily check-in. What is important today? What's going to really matter at the end of the day today? But mostly, guys, I was reminded listening to a podcast a few minutes ago, people matter more than anything. Those relationships we build, those friendships, that tight circle of people around us, and the people we come in contact with that we may never see again, that all matters. That love, that piece is what we should be focusing on. And I don't know about you, but I am incredibly task-oriented. I like to scratch off the things on my list. I tend to get very focused on the thing I'm doing and not the people around it or the reason I'm doing it, which is to help others. So if you're like me and you're struggling with that, feeling that the to-do list just can't quite get finished, pause. Take a minute today and pause. Say no so that you can say yes to the things that really matter. Treat yourself like a best friend. Get that third person perspective so you can kind of understand, perhaps, from some distance, what matters. Ask yourself what tomorrow you needs from you today. Sometimes that means I knock things off that list. And sometimes add. Understand yourself. If you've not completed some personality assessment or gotten curious about those things, that's something worth pursuing. I've got a silly little one on my website on what kind of pasta are you? But it's real stuff. It dives into some legitimate understanding of who we are. Identify those true priorities, not what somebody else says you should be doing, not the things that are only urgent, but ultimately what's going to meet those long-term goals. Be a little flexible. Try and give yourself the opportunity to see things from a much broader perspective than a single day. Check in with yourself. I like to check in weekly. I try to check in daily, but very often I'm running too fast. But I do try and at least check in weekly and say what's going on, what's coming up, where do I need to focus, where is the balance. But most of all, my friends, it's the small steps that actually make the difference. We don't change our lives radically by making these enormous leaps. They don't last for a short time, yes. But when we really want to see sustainable change in our lives, we have to actually commit to the small stuff that we know over time will compound and make a difference. So take a moment to pause today. Consider what's on the list. Consider what needs to be kicked off the list and why it's there, so that you are focusing on the people and not the stuff. Have a great day, my friends. Till next time.